And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to open this up and it's not going to be there. It's just not going to be there. And I'm going to have to face the fact that I just had some kind of hiccup in my brain or something. But when I opened it, and I mean, it's right there, and I grab it and take it over to her, that was, I think, when the panic really set in.
Yes, and many children see them too. About 75% of the world's children today are being born with etheric vision. And when your children talk with people and have daydream playmates, the chances are they are actually speaking to some of these people. Because these angels or angelic forces, or nature spirits as they're often called, will often make themselves seen.
And all of a sudden I hear him go, whoa, or, something like that. So I look up, and as I look up, I see this thing.
And I said, I've never seen a butterfly like you before.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
As soon as I spoke to it, it turns around and makes eye contact with me. And then it stands upright.
And it was at that moment that I saw it was like an orange light appear above this row of trees. And from this sort of orange light, this thing appeared. Its wings were actually like sycamore leaf shaped.
And I started talking to them. I'm like, hi, are y'all the dwarves? And I would hear whispers that would say, hi, yeah, you want to play? And it wasn't just my imagination. And I had told them, I'm like, my dwarves, they like beer, And my dad's like, yeah, sure, your dwarves like beer. And they were holding a conversation, and his beer slid upwards instead of downwards, how the house was tilted. And him and my brothers jumped up.
So I stopped calling out Adam, and I'm just my mind draws a blank, and I stop behind that tree stump. I'm pretty close to it now because I took a few steps forward, and I see this thing.
Welcome everybody tonight to Fascinating Fae. Tonight we're traveling to Pennsylvania to talk with Clyde. Clyde, how's it going in Pennsylvania tonight?
Fantastic. It's nice and chilly. We got a good snowfall. Peaceful. It's a peaceful time between the holidays here.
Well, no podcast is allowed to start on planet Earth unless it starts talking about the weather. So that's my thank you for helping me check that box. We're off to a good start for that reason. Well, Clyde, if you can just hang with me for a second, I'm going to introduce the show as I normally do, because you never know who's dropping in for the first time.
Absolutely. Have at it.
Okay. Well, here at Fascinating Fae, we collect stories of real events, encounters, experiences, sightings with the Fae and other unusual, hard to describe entities and their footprints. But because of that subject matter, we are not really here to convince anybody of anything. We're just here to collect those stories and create a space where you can talk about the truly bizarre stuff that may have happened to you. So rule number one, not here to convince anyone of anything. Number two, equally important, and I will say this now to you, Clyde, it's brave to come on the show. Talking about fairies, talking about interdimensional experiences is, a risk to your credibility in some circles, and that's not a joke. So it is brave to come on the show. It is somehow, I don't really understand this exactly yet, but I've got my theories. It is somehow more acceptable to say I saw a Bigfoot, or I saw a UFO, or even I saw a ghost. Those would all probably not get the same type of degree of eyebrow raise as saying I saw a fairy. So
Indeed. Yeah. I concur. That is an oddity about this, but I have a story to share, and the fact of the matter is, it wasn't the story in my life I thought I'd be sharing, but it was the one I experienced. Yeah, we only get one. We get the one we have to tell, and we don't get to. Well, maybe we get to pick it. That might be up for debate as well, but that's a different story entirely.
Well, I'm definitely excited to get into your story tonight. But yeah, that was all just to say, brave to come on the show. Last intro point is really just that I like to let my guests have a lot of space to talk, so I won't be interrupting you during your storytelling. And I'll jump in, of course. I'm not going to leave you hanging out there in air. But
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me and the opportunity. I really appreciate this.
well, the pleasure's mine. I've been waiting to and wanting to talk to you for more than a year, and I've kind of held your story that I know the parts of in the back of my mind for pretty much that whole time, because it involves, some of my favorite aspects of the phenomenon. So without further ado, what I'll just say is, you kind of know the scene here because you've listened to the show before. If you'd be so kind, just, bring myself and the audience to some understanding of what you've come here to talk about tonight, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah, so okay, it's interesting that we actually are kind of departing into the story from that note, because the presentations and the way that high strangeness started to unravel in the last 5, 6 years of my life, I wasn't immediately associating with anything fey or fairy. In fact, when I met my former partner, who experienced all of this with me, at that point I was kind of a staunch materialist. I had experienced some high strangeness that I saw really yield some crazy effects on people's lives, and I couldn't explain 20 years earlier. And I think that my materialist stance into adulthood was almost kind of like a defense mechanism. It was almost just like the easiest way for me psychologically to cope with the fact that there was stuff I had seen earlier in life I couldn't explain, but my mind, nowhere in my being was I gravitating toward anything specific. I wasn't thinking Irish or Gaelic or anything like that. I wasn't putting labels on anything. And basically, so like it all really did start around 2020, 2021. I meet my former partner, and she expresses she's had some interest in spooky stuff prior in her life, but not into it either. So this is very much something that's not on the table. However, we are both artists, and I was tattooing two witches who we became fast friends with. And we were hanging out with them the one night, just talking about different things. And they were a couple, and it was the husband who started talking about how he felt my partner had this fey or fairy energy about her. And so I don't know if, naturally when people first hear that, we get sort of the pop culture meme idea of a fairy. And I think that kind of excited her at first. So conversation ensued, and she got into this notion of just, the fae being this actuality. And we talked on it a bit, but that was pretty much where we let it lie. For a good while. I want to say, it had to be, I want to say, the better part of a year. And we did experience some weird stuff even in that year. But I was so determined to always just say, there's an explanation and I don't know it, right? And I remember the first instance I remember specifically, we were just watching a movie. And it was a point in the movie where the tension kind of was building. The music was doing that thing where it's like, something's going to happen. And almost perfectly in sync with the climax of this particular moment in the movie, we hear this thud behind us. And we're like, that totally wasn't the movie. That was something. So, we turn around, and it only takes us a few minutes of looking around to see that a bottle of like Lysol cleaner had somehow fallen quite a distance off the shelf where its little home was. And I want to say that was probably the first thing that started to kick off what became more and more high strangeness. But again, I'm not thinking fae or fairy. I knew that, she kind of was and was sort of into that. And she was into astrology and just like reading up on this stuff. But again, not something we were taking too seriously until finally this thing that we were calling a glitch in the matrix happened. And this was really quite a turning point for me. Certainly, I could no longer cling to my naivete and materialist perspective any longer. So, what had happened? She it was her time of the month. She wasn't feeling good, and she routinely went through ibuprofen like it was going out of style when this time would occur. I knew that. I had found a bottle of ibuprofen and put it up in a cabinet we had because I knew she was going to need it. So I was out. She wasn't feeling good. She called me up, asked me to get her ibuprofen. I told her there was some at the house. Wait till I get back. It's high up in the cabinet. I'll grab it for you as soon as I come back in. She said, thanks. I did finish the shopping, and all I did was just go. We live kind of near a little plaza with a grocery store there, and I just went to get some groceries and things. So I come back and having the exchange with her. I tell her what I got. She asks for a drink. I run back downstairs and get her the drink. And as soon as I'm getting the drink, I'm thinking, oh yeah, got to get her that ibuprofen. So I come back upstairs, hand her the drink and say, I'm going to get you that ibuprofen now. And she, like, the color just drains from her face. And I'm kind of stumped because I could tell that something is truly shocking her right now, but I have no idea what it is. Everything was pretty mundane up to that point. And she was like, just staring at me blankly. She goes, you just gave me the ibuprofen. And I said, no, I definitely didn't give you the ibuprofen. I'm positive we have one bottle and it's in that cabinet right now. I will get it. So I turned around. In fact, it was in the same room with her, no less. I opened up the cabinet, reached up, got the bottle of ibuprofen, turned around and went to hand it to her. And now her shock, the deer in headlights, kind of turned into almost like a panic. And it's strange to describe the dread I felt at that moment because it was just purely by merit of her reaction that I realized like something was seriously off here. And now I'm like, spill the beans. What's going on here? She says, I swear to you, you came into the room after you walked out to get the drink and you handed me the bottle of ibuprofen, and I was on my phone, so I didn't really look up at you, but here it is. She holds up another bottle of ibuprofen. Now I know there definitely was not two bottles of ibuprofen in the house, but there was also no, at least from my perspective, and obviously there's no way for that to be corroborated, but I know physically where I was in the house, the timing of it. There was no way that I could have made it up and down the flight of stairs twice, not having realized I did so, to have produced a bottle of ibuprofen I didn't know existed. Now, we went on Reddit. We posted on Reddit, and I believe we posted in a glitch in the Matrix subreddit about it, and took pictures of the bottles of ibuprofen, which did match as well. And again, no, not thinking Fae or fairy about any of this initially. So that's over, and I'm saying something really is a bit bizarre here, and I believe this was actually going into 2023 at this point that had happened. So again, there was a long period of our relationship where there was just really nothing too spooky besides flying Lysol cans here and there. I guess that was easy enough to write off, but after that happened, I had to apologize to her. I had to apologize and really humble myself and say, I'd experienced some stuff earlier in life that was pretty weird. I tried to put in my past, but I just have to concede there's obviously things that I can't explain. And the whole fact that she had seen a double of me was the part that was really kind of haunting me. And it was actually looking into that where I began to discover how common the presentation of a double or a mimic or doppelganger is in some of the old Irish mythos that's associated with the Fae. So I'm starting to kind of discover all of this, and we're going into 2023. And at that point, this was before the disclosure movement began to happen with ufology, by the way. Now, my partner begins to reveal to me she has this distinct interest in ufology and starts exposing to me to some of the stuff that's going on. And again, this was like May, June, just right around when David Grush popped up. And I remember it was around that time that there was, and again, I don't know how to describe this, so I'm not going to put a label on it, but there was some kind of it was like the room, we were both just talking about UFOs. The timing of this was kind of strange. And the room sort of, I thought, like darkened in a way. I actually thought it was my eyes. And I got extraordinarily sick to my stomach. She, though, looking in the direction that I'm looking in, where I'm seeing the corner of this room darken, she swears that she saw a green light moving around. Now, we're both looking at the same thing, seeing something completely different here. I'm seeing the room darken. She's seeing a light, and this all happened pretty quick. But what happened afterwards that was even stranger than the discrepancy, even though we were both in the same place and we both clearly had some kind of odd thing happen, but it was very, very distinguished between us. It was we had a 6-pack of it. It was actually non-alcoholic beer. She liked to have a beer, like the taste of beer, but she wasn't really a drinker. And I would get her this. I got non-alcoholic 6-pack of beer. I remember. It was in a plastic drawer, like in the crisper, like the bottom drawer of your refrigerator. And it was sometime after we had that incident of me getting nauseous and her seeing that the bottom of the drawer of the plastic drawer, the 6-pack in, is like filled with beer, and I could smell it immediately. As soon as I walked in the room, opened up the refrigerator, I could smell that smell. And I'm like, how did the beer spill here? This was because, again, it was just an unopened, untouched 6-pack. So I examined the 6-pack, and all 6 cans are there, still in the 6-pack, and there's nothing. I can't figure this out. I explained to her. I said, there's beer in the bottom of the refrigerator in the drawer, but the 6-pack's like none of these are open. And as we examine each one, we realize one of these cans is, again, not unopened. It's firm, but it is missing half of its fluid. So this is like, I can't explain, like everybody I tell this to always kind of gets this idea, well, there must have been a hole. Oh, that happens. Pressure, this, they come up with explanations. But then I break out the can because I actually saved this can. And I have shown this to every single person I have worked with or tattooed that will hear me out on this story, just to see if the if they could come up with the solution. Because so far, there has been none. No answer has been offered to any degree of satisfaction to explain how half the contents of this can emptied itself into the bottom of this drawer. And so the UFO thing was happening. This really had us kind of like, we were excited, in all honesty. It wasn't even an on-edge thing. We were quite, how could I put it? It was an enchanted kind of feeling. I will say we weren't, the sense of dread I got in the first instance, I don't know if maybe that was because it took me by surprise, but there wasn't any of that to follow. I didn't have any sense of dread. I wasn't freaked out. It was just exciting. And again, with all the stuff that was happening with disclosure at that time, I had just been introduced to CE5. Now, I have a long background in Eastern meditation, martial arts, Qigong, Tai Chi. And just due to that background, when somebody was bringing the CE5 to my attention, this was the first I was hearing of that. And it was basically in the context of, well, with how much meditating you've done and all this training, you should be able to do something with this if you really tried. And I admit it was kind of reckless, but I was so, again, still coming off of this perspective where I was running sort of skeptical, and I'm thinking, things have been exciting, but nothing. What is really going to happen here? Am I going to, have a mind speak with an alien? I really didn't know what to anticipate there. So I did start doing the CE5 then as well. Now, as anybody listening knows who has gotten into UAP or UFOs to any depth, Jacques Vallée, going all the way back to the 60s, and a lot of prominent ufologists have made the connection between the Fae, the fairy, and the UAP UFO stuff. Now, I'm not going to get into that at length, but naturally at that point, because I was doing the CE5, studying up on all of that, I began to discover this correlation. So, her and I were talking about that. And now at this point, she is pretty adamant that we have a little fey friend, a little fairy buddy. And the beer kind of sealed the deal, I think, at that point, because it was like a food item, right? And once she made that association there, it was kind of, in her mind, I think, decided that was kind of what we were contending with. Although I still was sort of, I never, again, put really much of a label on things until we moved down the road a little bit. Now, I'm doing the CE5. I'm trying to remember exactly. So it was early October. It was way after the David Grush trials, and all of this disclosure stuff's kicking off. We're doing a letter writing campaign to try to support the UAPDA at that time. And I did actually, doing the CE5, see some lights and things in the sky, but again, easy to kind of write off. Though I had become somewhat really into the ideas of the CE5 and everything else. And sort of, I felt I was almost charged with exploring my own consciousness to a degree, and why I was really doing this. Was I trying to collect evidence? Because that seemed really uncouth, In other words, when people are trying to have these human initiated contact experiences, are we really just doing it to make a good YouTube video or whatever it is, So I was kind of doing some soul searching at that time and really trying to reconcile with myself that, no, I wasn't trying to do the C5 or any of the stuff I was doing to gather evidence and put out there into the world. At that time, I really just wanted answers for myself, because I was starting to feel like I was losing it, right? I was having this very enchanted experience on one hand. These weird things are kind of happening in life. We're seeing this stuff happen in Congress, but I'm going, if I don't have with 100% certainty within me that this is kind of really real, I don't know if I could be 110% invested in all of the stuff that we were doing, because we were working very proactively on the whole disclosure movement and effort with the Disclosure Party at that time, the letter writing campaign, as I just mentioned. So there's a lot of things going on, and lo and behold, it was October 5th. I believe it was October 5th. It was a Thursday, the first Thursday in October. I was jogging, and I won't go through the whole encounter, and or at least at that much depth. I guess no, that would be, well, okay. The encounter, despite the fact that UFO and UAP might not be fey or fairy to everyone else, this was the reality of what happened. We're making this connection. I'm doing the CE5, and on this particular day, a plane overtakes me. So I'm seeing like the nose of a plane, if you could imagine, flying right over my head. When I say right over my head, I mean right over the tree line. So this was 100, maybe 150 feet, 200 feet up at most, maybe if it was like way above the trees. But it was way significantly lower than any plane I had ever seen. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is crazy that this plane is so low, but I'm not hearing it. I'm not like feeling anything. I would think that, I'd be getting like knocked over if like a jumbo jet was flying that close above my head. But this thing is just continuing to cruise along. And I feel like it's moving odd as well. And as it keeps going, now imagine from my perspective, nose first, this is just going straight over my head. Well, finally, I realized this is a plane with no wings. That's literally what I remember saying to myself in my head, like, this is a plane with no wings. And then I said, oh, wait a second. No, there are no planes with no wings. This is something special. This is very unique. And I did start to think about my phone too. I had my phone on me while I was jogging, listening to tunes. I could have taken a picture, and I kid you not, the soul searching and all that mulling over why it was I wanted to have an experience that was kind of irrefutable for my own personal interest. That all came rushing back, and I felt like a little kid about to get screamed at by like their parents or their teacher or something. Just got caught doing something wrong, right? So I don't touch the phone. I don't touch the phone at all, because that felt like it was really loud in my mind. Like, don't do that. And I'm just watching this thing, and the way that it's moving. And again, it's just it's like bigger than a jumbo jet. very like it was like black but not shiny, except for these three silver panels that were like right dead center. And I mean, like, again, I was close enough I could see like every detail of this thing, but the way that it was moving, it looked more like it was sliding, like sliding through the sky, like an ice skater would slide. Not like you would see something fly, but something you would see, again, slide. And it comes to a dead stop as it gets to above a bridge that's not too far ahead of me. Gets kind of even with that bridge, it starts to turn. And that was when I knew that this was Uncanny Valley. I'd never seen anything like this because when it stopped and starts to turn, it turned like a top would spin. So this thing is like, if you could imagine something turning on an axis, that's like the only way I could describe it, but it's continuing to do this where it spins like a top, sort of adjusts its trajectory, moves, spins like a top, adjusts, moves, spins, moves, spins, moves. It keeps doing this until now it's pointing about northeast and it starts to turn blue. This thing that was very clearly black, huge, unmistakable a few moments earlier is now blue to my vision. And it was like instant that this thing's starting to turn blue. And then it's getting brighter and brighter. I even have a moment here where, as it's getting so bright, I'm thinking this is like nuclear fission or something I'm witnessing, and I'm scared now a bomb's going to go off. I'm going, this isn't a UFO. This is like a nuke or something. I'm saying goodbye to Scranton here, and Northeast PA is about to get blown off the map. But that isn't what happens. This thing just turns into what looks like a blue star, but at a very, again, low altitude. And it either left so fast I couldn't see like it leave, like, be like trying to watch like a laser pointer move, or it trailed into something so thin that it just trailed off into nothingness. It's hard to tell the difference. My first impression was that it was just taken off over the horizon so fast I couldn't see it. But then as I thought about it more and more, I'm saying, you know what? I can't really say for sure if that, from my perspective, if it was actually traveling that far that fast, or if it was just trailing off into a little blip of light and then disappearing. But the actual physical shape of this thing is what I mean. Like, this was so uncanny because not only did this thing fly in a way that I could never, like, I've never seen anything move like that in the sky in my life. Unmistakably, nothing like that ever in my life. But the fact that this huge hulking object somehow changed its physical form into light, as far as I can tell, and disappeared like that was that was the thing. That was it, right? Like now this is irrefutable to me. I'm like I can't possibly explain that away. I certainly don't think there was humans in there doing that or operating that thing. I mean, what happens to humans that turn into light and disappear like that? I mean, I just can't. There was obviously physics there that I can't even shake a stick at. I wonder if anybody could, to be honest. But so I come back and I'm all excited. I'm like, you're not going to believe what I saw. I tell my partner about it. She's all excited. And again, this was all very positive up until this point. Now, as we go into that weekend following that encounter, all sorts of stuff starts happening. First tattoo that I'm doing, this weird electrical anomaly occurs where the electricity goes out in a light, and then from that light, it basically like follows like a straight path going off and like knocking out every electronic thing in its pathway, going on this straight shot right through the studio space, right through the rest of the building. And it was like, I want to say the next day that followed after that, could have been 2 days, but it was either Saturday or Sunday. We also had this weird sound anomaly occur where we're in our living room, and right in the center of our living room, we start hearing this humming. Sounds like a stereo equipment or something, but there's nothing there. And as we approach where we can tell the source of this humming is coming from, it like moved, and it kept moving until it was outside. When we went outside, we can hear this thing echoing through the valley as it's trailing along, leaving, where going where I don't know, but it was leaving our residence. And I think at that point she was getting pretty freaked out. I do remember there being a kind of a funny sense of, about that weekend after seeing that thing. It just didn't feel quite as playful. Now maybe that's just my bias in hindsight. I don't know. But following that weekend, Monday, we were up working early morning. I work weird hours doing the tattoo thing. She was doing that with me, and we had finished up. I was doing some graphics at about 10:30 in the morning. She was floor down from me, and after I finished the graphics, I was going to come down see her, and we were doing the night shift, so probably going to sleep or something at that point. But point being, I was just finishing some work. YouTube was on to my left. She's downstairs doing whatever. We're keying down for after having worked the weekend. And I'm listening to this YouTube, which was somebody recounting their abduction experience and talking about the things that had happened to them. As I'm listening to this and working, I'm noticing now all of a sudden the sun's down, and I'm saying, "Wait a second, it's 10. How could the sun be down?" And I mean, it was that fast. It was that fast where I'm just kind of lost in thought as I'm working on this thing. I don't really notice anything exactly being wrong. I did feel fatigued. I remember feeling like I was getting really tired, but again, it was normal. I'd been up working for practically the entirety of the weekend. So I was ready for bed. It seemed normal to be tired, but it didn't seem normal for me to have just like fallen into this like narcoleptic coma and awoken without realizing it after the sun had gone down. So I saw that sun was down. I got a bad feeling. I got a real bad kind of sense of panic. Like this doesn't even make sense. And I really felt like I needed to find my partner then and make sure she was okay. That was like the only thing I could think of. But I also realized like I was having a very hard time moving. It was like I couldn't convince myself to move. Everything felt like molasses. Something wasn't right. My head was killing me. Panic setting in, all of this kind of this cacophony of things happening at once. And I could tell I'm like not okay. This is all happening very rapidly. And I swear it was like one of the hardest feats of will that I could recall in my life was trying to get myself up down to the next floor to find her. When I come into the room, she pops up. She's looking right at me, tears in her eyes, all shaken up, and she just starts going, I was just sleeping or dreaming or sleeping, kind of like reacting almost like she was like frightened or like I like caught her in the middle of something. It was a very weird kind of reaction. So now I kind of, like I said, I knew something was wrong here, but I felt a little better when I came down into the room and saw that she was like physically okay. I didn't feel like I was having a hard time moving anymore. And I tell her, like, I don't know what happened, but there was this large gap of time and my head is killing me. I thought, maybe I fell asleep. I don't know. And so she just kind of interjects, starts explaining what had happened reluctantly to her, which I don't want to go into detail and explain her story for her. That doesn't seem right. But long story short, she believed that she was dealing with owls, seeing owls, until she remembered that owls are often a screen memory in abduction experiences, at which point she became cognizant of the fact that that's what was happening, that she was having this abduction experience, and that there was a window. I remember saying that they were taking her through the ceiling. There was a hole or window in the ceiling they were taking her through as I came down and interrupted this event. At which point everything stopped and she was staring at me all shook up. No explanation as to what was going on there. So needless to say, this was now not cool at this point. Now we are like, this isn't an Enchanted Mary experience any longer. We're going into the holiday. The headache that started that day for me, though, didn't stop. When I say it didn't stop, I mean, this went into a migraine that I missed the next few days of work for, and then literally like was getting scared I wasn't going to figure out how to like start paying bills and rent because it was going on so long. I was missing weeks and weeks. I'd gone to see other doctors. They thought it was a sinus infection. They thought it was a cold because it was cold and flu season. I'd taken different medications. Nothing was touching this. The holiday was terrible. We were supposed to go visit her family, and it was like everything that could have went wrong between that early October and December absolutely did. I mean, absolutely did. It was the worst run of luck that her and I have had, to such an uncanny extent that I can't even, there's no way I could really put it into words, because concurrent with just the bad luck was also bad health. And I mean crippling. Now, I've dealt with different things throughout my life that hurt, but this head thing was on a different level. Let me tell you. Now, I mentioned long background in the internal arts, qigong, martial arts, tai chi, stuff like that. So I was very proactive also about trying to get myself back on my feet And after the holidays, I kind of did. I mean, I had to. I had to work. I had to figure out a way to kind of save existence, despite whatever was going on. Now, at that point, I was trying to kind of, even though I was still involved with disclosure and still kind of doing what I was doing as far as the letter writing campaign was concerned. The UAPDA by Christmas time was over. Only a portion of that passed, but that was still quite the successful venture as we saw it. Then, coming into the new year, I was really just kind of concerned with getting life back on track after all of this, whatever you want to call it, shenanigans. And I was not trying to bring up spooky stuff to her and rattle her. She did not want to talk about the incident ever again. I couldn't get her to recount that story to me, but a handful of times when it was really necessary. There was nothing fun about any of that for her. She did not want it brought up ever again. So I was trying to be respectful of that. But this head stuff was getting much, much, much worse. Now, what I also remember, though, starting after the holiday, as I was, again, trying to be so cognizant not to bring this stuff up, things start moving around all over the place in the house. Stuff is moving around. I was somewhere, I want to say, it was either right around this time or going into early spring, where we even had things, there was like a candy incident, for instance. And this is what really kind of put us over the mark when it came to believing there was something beyond corollary now with this whole Fae thing. So, and it felt as though all of this stuff, things moving around, getting lost, things moving around in just different ways, was forcing us to talk about it, which was my point. It seemed like it was forcing us to acknowledge it. Like the more that we would try then to not acknowledge it, especially in lieu of her having a lot of anxiety and fear over this now, which didn't exist before. It was like, man, if you could feel like somebody else was screaming for your attention right in front of your face without being there, that's what it kind of felt like some of the times. And again, this candy incident somewhere around this month incident happened. So same store that I mentioned earlier from the ibuprofen story, we would buy these sugar-free candies from. They were these little packs of Russell Stover's candies that were only like $1.25. You got 4 pieces of candy that were sugar-free. We always got the caramels. Well, the one day the caramels were sold out. And I thought that I had gotten 2 things of caramels and something else. But what was weird was when I'd gotten back to the house, there was only 1 package of caramels, 1 package of something that neither of us liked that I couldn't figure out why we got. I can't remember what that was. And another coconut thing, which she was adamantly opposed to. She hated coconut. So there was this weird question of, even though they were out of the caramel, why did I select these things that seemed like she wouldn't even like? So, but we didn't really think that much of it. I was just a little shocked. I've been thinking like maybe, in dealing with all of this head stuff, I'm really starting to have some brain farts here and there. But we open up the caramels, and instead of there being 4 pieces of candy, there was 3. And that was the first thing that was like odd, but again, that happens, right? Like a manufacturer, there's a lot of times I've gotten in 1 less or 1 extra of something in a package. So that doesn't seem too weird until we open the second thing of these candies, and there are 5 candies. And could you guess what the extra candy was? It was one of the caramels. It was like the caramel that was missing out of 1 unopened bag somehow just happened to be in the other bag of whatever other candy this was. So again, this doesn't seem too profound, but it was like, this was freaking us out. We were like, this doesn't make any sense at all. And we thought that it ended there that night. I could still see this vividly because just, even though it sounds mundane, it was so weird as we examined these candies. But we finally open up the 3rd bag. And by this point, she had been going through some of them and had discovered apparently that 1 in that second bag of those 5 was a sealed wrapper with nothing in the wrapper. When we get open to the 3rd bag, now she's like scouring through the 3rd bag naturally to see if there's like something weird there, an anomaly. She finds 2 candies conjoined, like smushed together in 1 wrapper, barely able to fit inside. So between these three bags of candy, this was the weirdest kind of mix up that I mean, like, I couldn't even have like contrived that in my head if I tried. I like how these candies somehow mismatched and switched around. And it was at that point where I finally was like, okay, this is very, all of this stuff is now very signature of the Fae, but I couldn't deny again how profound everything in October was that had happened. So I'm at this point in my life now very much feeling like I understand why these connections between UAP, UFO, and these other type of phenomenon, these parallels get made. And the one to the Fae is like, at least in my life, again, I really hate to try to put labels on things, but these are the exact classic things that we see from all of the Fae fairy lore. You know, the candy, the mimicry or doppelganger situations, and probably the kicker though was, again, I was saying things had been going missing. We were losing things. Well, my partner at that point in time, fully accepting this Fae explanation as well, actually started trying to appease the Fae by leaving gifts for them. That she had read about, doing different things. I actually can't get into all of the stuff. I'm not even entirely sure what it was, but I know that she was kind of looking and reading into how to get along with these beings and make peace with them, and actively approaching that. And I mean, the one time we had lost our entire rent money, we always put in the same place. It naturally weren't like going out gallivanting with rent money in our pockets, so it was stashed away, and it simply wasn't in the place it was stashed in. We had no idea what to do. We tore the house apart for quite a while, rechecked the spot infinite amount of times. And as soon as she went and did whatever it was that she did downstairs in a room separate from me, to try to make peace with the Fae, as she put it, wouldn't you know it, while she's doing that upstairs, I checked the spot that we originally checked. Again, it was always there. 101 times we checked it, but that time, then it was there. And I'm saying, like, this is either now I've have a tumor or something, and I'm having like some complete blackouts. I really don't know what's going on, or this is just undeniable at this point. This is just simply something that is like off the rails, because we both felt, her and I, at this point, that there was it wasn't like there was just one incident. It wasn't like there was this was an ongoing thing that was happening kind of neck and like right along with us as we were doing our life. There was this thing that was doing something right next to us, and that was what it felt like. It felt like there was always extra company, like we had a third person living with us at that point. And she really did openly, I believe, accept that it was a fairy kind of thing, and our best strategy was to make peace with that. And I don't necessarily think that was a bad strategy. I didn't have any perspective on a strategy. I wasn't thinking that way because, again, pain in my head was taking me out of the game entirely. That was a constant struggle going through that winter, until finally, actually, the one day I finished the tattoo, got done, felt like I had a fever, checked, and I did. I had 105 fever. And while it didn't seem like I was too sick initially, it was only within about an hour of developing that fever that I was down. I mean, I was like losing consciousness down, and very evident something was wrong. So she called an ambulance, and long story short, there was an infection that had gotten into my bloodstream. So whatever was going on with my head that was not resolving with any of the measures that the first initial regular practitioners or the regular doctors I was seeing, throwing antibiotics and everything at it, did nothing. And apparently this thing had gotten into my bloodstream. I lost consciousness, and that was a harrowing ordeal. That was like quite. That was on a Friday, in fact, and I didn't actually wake up until Wednesday of the following week to her. Flabbergasted. I woke up. She was crying and all. She was explaining to me how she didn't think I was going to wake up. I'm all confused. I had no idea I was out that long, first of all, and I had this very profound kind of peacefulness through this dream experience I had, and really thought I was just waking from a peaceful rest, not realizing that I was actually waking from almost having croaked. So weird thing It was though after that, I wasn't too bad. I wasn't the head wasn't hurting anymore. I had this like kind of refreshed zeal again, and that was when now with all of this stuff happening, her and I kind of looked at each other and were like, we need to tell somebody about this stuff. Like this is whatever we just went through. Now me having really reflected on things, having almost just croaked. I think we realized right then that like this was something that was too far into the scope of extraordinary for her and I to just forget about now or try to cope with. At least I certainly couldn't. So we kind of elected at that point to start seeing what we can do via, because we were on the disclosure party, like I'd said, doing the letter writing campaign and all of that. We'd gotten to know other experiencers through Reddit, things of that nature, and we really weren't into the political side of disclosure all that much. I want to say that too. While we were associated with and founding members of the disclosure party, I was never one for politics, and neither was she. Oddly enough, at that point in time, things really come to a bit of a head. There's a let's say some creative discrepancies amongst leadership at the Disclosure Party, and we decide to just start doing our own little group, catering to different experiencers and taking it from there. And I started really getting into explaining the qigong and the tai chi that I felt had really saved my life because it was pretty close call there. I did discover damage at this point in the back of my mouth behind both of my molars. I had symmetrical holes, one of which had gotten infected. That infection was what had gotten in my bloodstream. So they got that out. And they took care of the other side as well. So I lost my wisdom teeth, which were never presenting any problems before that. And I really thought that was it. We're going to run our little experiencer group and, that's going to ride off into the sunset, right? We're just going to keep talking about UFOs, fae, and ghosts and live happily ever after. That was not at all what had happened, though. Actually, there was we were dealing with a lot of backlash and ridicule. That's all I'll say. Downstream from the Disclosure Party, so we kind of had some personal turmoil going on in the midst of all of this as well. But the pain that was in my face before, I can't say it necessarily came back in spades because this was like a whole new thing. But it was months after my face was taken care of and the infection was gone. We were under a lot of stress, but I don't really think that was causative. But what begins to happen is I developed something called trigeminal neuralgia. Basically, you've got a nerve bundle in your face, this tripart or three-way nerve bundle that goes to like around your eyes, right above your mouth, and then to your lower jaw. So it's kind of hitting everywhere in the front of your face. And apparently, doctors actually refer to trigeminal neuralgia as the worst pain you don't have to feel because it's usually not fatal, and it generally only lasts brief periods of time, 10, 15 minutes at most. But it's like the most extraordinary pain of your life, they say. It's like worse than child labor. They compare it to getting shot sometimes. Very, very, very intense pain. So this wasn't quite the migraine situation I was dealing with prior. This was like out of the blue, all of the sudden, as we have a lot of stress mounting from all of these different things and trying to get our life back in order from all the time we had just lost, or I had just lost, due to my health. I start basically in the middle of the day just looking like I'm getting whacked in the face with like a baseball bat or something. I'm like, this drops me, whatever this pain is, and it travels throughout my face. Always ends in my teeth. Feels like my teeth are being drilled. So I was going, of course, back to the doctor, back to the dentist, getting all this stuff looked at. They thought they had solutions to everything. No solutions. So there was no happily ever after. Our life became quite harrowing. And it was at that point that she actually said she had begun to see grays and entities around the house that she did not want to talk about. She distanced herself from me. And that just kept kind of devolving into a situation where she was just at her wit's end. She said, "You know what? This stuff is real. I can't deal with it." And she took off. That was the end of our relationship. And It was quite the time. Now, oddly enough, the story though does kind of end, or at least this leg of the journey to catch us up to present tense, I should say, does end on a kind of positive note. After her departure, I'd gone through CAT scans, MRIs before she'd left, and at that point, they had thought that actually I was developing MS. Quite the scary thing to hear. But very quickly, with more MRIs, turns out that wasn't the case. They couldn't identify what I had, although I did have a particular white mass or white presentation. I guess they were saying could have been like scar tissue or something near the brain stem. And they said they could not figure out how that could have been pushing on the trigeminal nerve. They were very interested in going in through the back of my head to try to get at it. But I had, after she had left, another incident of missing time, after which I was fine. It was a very weird, like when I say missing time, I guess I should flesh this out appropriately, because this was actually how this head thing ended. Now, I had been working through my own regimens really hard to try to do what I could do on my end as well. But again, I can't take full credit because so, okay, basically she's gone. I'm coping with this. I'm, of course, all depressed and distraught, right? You just lost my partner of half a decade over, non-human intelligence, essentially. And I'm getting a little dinner together, threw it in the microwave. I went and set up the little area that I eat. I put something on YouTube, paused it, had like a fork and like something there, like half the table was basically set for myself. And I went back to get that out of the microwave. When I walked into the kitchen, the sun's down. So it's just kind of like this. And I did. It felt so eerily similar to noticing the sun was down the other time that it really it brought back an immediate, super bad panic. I'm like, because I knew immediately it was, again, very early in the day that I was doing this. I think around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I couldn't be sure, but way, way, way ahead of the sun going down. And lo and behold, the microwave is now wide open. And I look inside the microwave, and the bowl that I had my food in was looked like it had been burnt. It was a microwave-safe plastic bowl that looked like it had been incinerated. It was just like charred remains, and nothing in it, though. Nothing in it. It was just the burned plastic. So all the food was missing from the container. The container was burnt, and from that day forward, I did not have another trigeminal nerve attack. Now, I did have another scan of the head, which determined that this thing was where it was remaining, I guess, wherever it was, which was a distance from the trigeminal nerve. So, take that for, what you will. I mean, I got in touch with a lot of other people, naturally, trying to research this, who had gone through similar experiences. And it does, as it turns out, I guess these particular white masses in and around the brainstem are something they do sometimes see in the brain scans of people who have contact experiences, or say service members who've had issues having been in close proximity with exotic technology. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what it is. And I honestly don't really care. I just never want to feel another trigeminal nerve pain for as long as I live. But that was the long and the short, of the story, kind of bullet pointing what had happened and why. Again, as time went on, and I gotta say, I was trying to get through the actuality of what had happened. But as it was very strange to me as time went on, how fascinated I really did become. I got into the two-a-day Danan and all of that, history, and sort of really feeling partial very much to the whole hypothesis that a lot of these things that we had named pre-Bronze Age as this or that really are responsible for at least some of what we are seeing today. That's pretty much it. I wish it did have a happier ending. Her and I do at least remain on speaking terms. I mean, you go through stuff like that. How could you not? But, it was kind of a bittersweet ending. And we just, the group persists. Memories collide. Will remain. Experiencer friendly group that we are. Keep doing our thing and talking to other people, who go through this stuff. And I think that was really, when I look at the whole scope of not just this, but even earlier in my life, I feel like that was sort of the like humming behind everything that was happening was this you know, realization that like people go through this, and it's if they can't talk about it, not only will again we never get anywhere with it, but people will really suffer uh in a way that nobody should have to, right? Like we none of us should have to feel like we're alone in our experience on this planet, because none of us are in anything we experience, no matter how bizarre it is. But where we're at, the type of stigma that follows certain things, we do unfortunately find ourselves in a time when not everybody's going to be comfortable talking about the things they experience, and that could really poison you, you know. So I think if nothing else, you know, not only kind of well, maybe I have two things I took from this. Not only do we need to be there to support one another to kind of normalize at least discussing some of this, but also that's the only way we're going to begin to figure out how could I put it, meet contact ethically, which is kind of where my mind has been in you know, all the time that followed, you know, thinking about the fact that, you know, for as much as that experience I just shared sounds negative, you know, maybe it wasn't negative. Maybe that was exactly what I needed to learn, what I needed to learn to be where I'm at now, or perhaps that might even serve me further down the road. I'm not sure, but I don't take any of that as just outright negative. You know, I think that we are dealing with whatever we're dealing with. We have to remember kind of how we are as humans, right? Like the human family tries to make contact in some of the most uncouth, heinous kind of ways, right? Like we try to rob them of their rides. We try to, as soon as they show up for dinner, we're trying to snap their picture and put it on Instagram. I mean, there's a reason I think why when we have experiences with these, you know, other intelligence, they're not exactly thrilled with our conduct, right? So I've been thinking a lot more on that since going through all of this, and because I mean, hey, if something's here, which obviously it is here, and some of it may have been here, I think clearly it has been, then we have to level with ourselves at some point and say, well, I'm either if they're here, I'm either going to get along with them or I'm not, right? And that's not serving anyone. So I guess that's kind of where I land with it now. It's not, and I truly do believe that it's a much more enchanted life to live. I, you know, there's that as well, right? Our perspective does have a lot to do with the reality that we're going through on the daily. And I have to admit, you know, living as a materialist and having found a lot of success with tattooing, it wasn't like I didn't find success with that, you know, that type of hierarchy of values. Um, Very empty, very unfulfilled. We hear that all the time, that people get all the stuff they want, they're unfulfilled. But when you really get there and you experience that, and you start looking around and wondering why, right? I think that when you start getting near the phenomenal, you start hitting upon the answer. You know, the inherent mystery, whatever that might be for you at this point in time. Although it's you know, kind of all part and parcel.
Yeah, nothing in the material plane matches the thrill and exuberance and engagement of the phenomenal. I like how you say that.
Oh, it really does, right? It colors this otherwise mundane experience and allows us to kind of see it in like HD all of a sudden, Technicolor or something. It just looks like a much more fascinating world when the big tree in my yard happens to be the refuge of these ancient energies and intelligences than just a tree. It's a much better world.
Indeed. I'm just going to hit save on all this because that was riveting and I don't want to lose any of it. Just give me a moment and I'll respond and we'll continue to record.
Take your time.
Reinitializing. Hello, check, 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 testing. That seems to be good. Check, check, testing. A little quiet, but hold on. Let me just... Oh no, it's a byproduct of how zoomed in I am. Hello, hello, check, check. Yeah, we're good. Can you say something again, Clyde? You still there? Oh, did I lose you? Hello? 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 Are you there? See? Do you see what's happening? Oh, yeah, I know. Hold on. Yeah. I could feel that coming through, and remember at the onset of our conversation, I told you the past 5, they've had a hard time laying down. Hold on. Are we recording? Just a second. I want to make sure we're recording. We're not. Hold on, let me get back to it. Okay, say something again. No, these fuckers. Let's hold on. Again? Say something. Testing. Oh, weird. Can you try it again? There. Okay. We're back. Yeah, man. So, hold on. Are we? Let me just check. Are we back? Okay, that's tracking and that's tracking. Okay. I'm just going to jump in as though there's nothing that has happened. But before we do that, I'll just say what happened. So I don't know how I lost you there. I didn't touch anything. It's like, well, I have an idea. Hold on. Let me just check what I think happened there. Yeah, that's why. My Google Chrome instance, which is just my web browser, crashed. Why? Because it's trying to interrupt the upload of my backup files. And that's why we just got disconnected. But because Drive has good software, it's recovered and it's showing me that both of them are finished now. So I got it back up. And then when I finished dealing with that and I called you back, as soon as I started to talk to you, it flipped the microphone to a different input right in front of my very eyes when I wasn't touching it.
That was weird. From my end, it was making these like sounds I've never heard before.
Oh, fuck, I wish I had the ability to record that.
Well, it goes back a long time for me. Yeah, when I said there was stuff that happened earlier in my life 20 years ago was when that began. And I did realize, I mean, when we started with the disclosure party after Grush, I was making a logo for them. And when I tell you, we went from being like the perfect couple to immediately bickering all the time. Both of us constantly had something physically wrong with us. And it was so it was like so abrupt. It was like for 2 years we had no issues whatsoever. The second that we started working toward the disclosure end of things, really, like, it was so strange how that opposition became very apparent in our lives. Every project I tried to work on with the disclosure party from there forward had something. There was always something, but if nothing else, just the inherent feeling that I was kind of familiar with going many years back. That's a different story entirely. But yeah, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I had met a woman who was extremely clairvoyant. She had like some very unique skills. Similarly to this story, though, then I was a real hard-nosed skeptic. Though then it was like a whole different story because I had no real precedent of that. And yeah, as it turned out, the way she actually developed those abilities was having been the victim of this satanic abuse type of situation, real bad stuff. But I being very interested in this, and she eventually wanting to write about it, we kind of did the ghost hunting thing together, and went so far as to researching this place called the Poor Farm. And man, when I tell you the Viva la Resistance in my life at that point, and all of the people who went to that place with me, was just absolutely uncanny. Every single person who went to that location, their lives went in some really dark places, including my own. I mean, the place burned down when I was 22, I believe, 21 or 22. By 23, I was facing 23 years in prison for felonies I didn't even commit. I was set up by the DA, which is why I was sympathizing with your story earlier. Um, but yeah, and that was just like one example. The girl I mentioned, she actually ended up and moving to Alaska. Our best friend who was helping us research this place and write about it, disappeared, went missing for a week and a half and was found dead. And that like really was such a sobering type of situation to go from not believing in anything to realizing like, wow, this stuff has a way of truly, if you don't respect it, it's not going to respect you, and it could really wreak havoc in your life.
Okay, let me get back to responding to your storytelling, which is something I really want to do, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. How do I segue? Okay, I'll just go like this. Clyde, first of all, I have, a personal policy that I don't like to have favorite guests, but this is definitely one of my favorite interviews I've conducted so far for a wide variety of reasons. There's at least, 8 or 9 key components to your storytelling that I want to unpack and ask some more questions about, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. By all means.
Thank you. Again, so, for the audience listening, one of the side missions, or probably the main mission of the show, if I'm honest about it, depending on the day. The first reason the show is here is because I saw and experienced something I couldn't explain, and I was looking for answers to what that was. It's in conversations like this one that I'm having here today with you, Clyde, that I get the most goosebumpy, like I'm on Mr. Mouse's wild ride kind of feeling,
right.
Because a lot of what you're describing is so evocative of the same phenomena which I've experienced both in my initial sighting and then subsequently through the production of the show. I would also just like, before we get into this question, just to kind of compliment sandwich things here for you, you're extremely articulate and really well, well is not the right word. You're a really like great storyteller.
Oh, you're too kind. I wish you could hear what I sound like in my head. Corey Feldman, blubbering idiot, but
No, not whatsoever. Actually.
Well, thank you.
You have a great mix of like self-deprecation, self-realization, and pragmatic, recalcitrance in relation to talking about this truly mind-boggling stuff. And that to me is one of the marks of a real experiencer, is this kind of trying to keep it within a compartmentalized version of understanding that could be served to other people. Because there's this need for, on some level, to be validated and understood and accepted as having had these things really happen.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
You got to give it the right language is truly a burden that comes along with trying to, like, there's 2 ways that you could go about talking about these kind of experiences. You could dim the lights and you could put on wavy music and you could tell it like it's a, new age something, or you could talk about it kind of like you're talking about it. And I like to think like I talk about it. I think you actually do a better job than I do of being articulate around these experiences. But I share a lot of the fascination that you do, and not to get ahead of myself into like the question portion here, but I agree with some of that analysis around it not necessarily being good or nice all the time.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to discuss in the contemporary climate as well, right? It's not exactly, it's a very polarizing topic. A lot of people are vehemently opposed to accepting the notion there's anything other than benevolent beings, or there's anything other than this, that, or the next. And that's, oh boy, the second that I feel we start excluding things from the conversation, like we can talk about all this, but we can't talk about that. That's where well, we officially, that's checkmate. We lose right there. We're not going to get further in vectoring this into any capacity that we could all find overlap. within, so it's that exclusive type of thing is something I try to be very mindful to avoid. And I mean, I like how you said too, the I forget how you worded it, the burden an experiencer bears, or the hallmark of an experiencer, and how they become more articulate in the way that they talk about things. And I mean, I think that to a degree, when you do go through something you can't explain, I mean, you go over that in your mind. For me, it's like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a snack
Yes.
in between. I
Yes.
think about it all the time, and am constantly reviewing my perspective on it, and how that changes me in relation to the experience I'm having now. While still not trying to, completely find myself too far removed and out in orbit. So it really is the type of thing that, man, it's like it changes your life. And it's sometimes the school of hard knocks. It isn't always pretty. And, but I'm also sort of like, you do the thing long enough and you look at it long enough and you keep thinking about what you've experienced and how you've experienced it. And that positive, negative sort of dissolved. At least it did for me. I can't even see things in that spectrum anymore of just good and bad, right? Like there's certainly cause for more entropy versus a reduction of entropy, and I'm always hoping that I'm aligning with the reduction in entropy. But if I'm doing something wrong or not in alignment with whatever it is that I'm contending with, naturally that's not going to be the case, and well-being is jeopardized. So I guess that's kind of how I see it now, instead of just this clean and neat, linear, good to bad, bad to good type of spectrum, right? It's complex, just like we are.
Everything you've said there is spot on. I'll say again, you do a better job of articulating some of the touch points on this subject matter than I do. I'm going to get to the questions about your storytelling because it's so important to do that, but let's just stick here for a quick second because this is valuable. I call it like a barbed wire wrapped present.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
They give you a beautiful, amazing gift, but it is wrapped in barbed wire. And that barbed wire is the collateral damage to your mental health, the isolation and potential ramifications of that to your mental health. Because it's like a twofold brain fuck. Like the one is this just happened, and then the second is now I'm alone in this experience.
That's the truth too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then furthermore, the language thing, like you're so articulate. I try to be articulate. I've heard in various like chat forums or comment sections on this show that there's a criticism when people are trying to be too articulate, because it's like some people look at that critically as a delineator of non-truthfulness, whereas I say no, what's happened is that your brain is transitioned into this space and you're grasping for understanding, and in the vain attempt to produce understanding in others that are non-experiencers, you are trying to appear as digestible, credible, understandable as humanly possible. And at no point do you want to sound raving or crazy or this or that. So the use of language becomes paramount, almost like one of your strongest weapons of power in convincing or conveying the truth behind this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What a way to look at it. That's beautiful, actually. I love that.
It's in real experiencers is this need to be taken seriously. And I view that with extreme empathy because, I've told the story on the show a lot about, what happened with my friend DK. And even me, like I know that barbed wire gift is not just like a coy analogy. It's a real attempt to say what it feels like to know about this stuff and to experience this stuff. It is uplifting and energizing and can make you feel special and can make you feel chosen. It can do all sorts of really heady things to you and then leave you utterly unable to bring others over to your side of understanding. And it's so isolating.
100%. And that's where, meditation, I think, is key to navigating this stuff, boy. I mean, meditation's been key for me to navigating life in general. It was always a part of my life just because that was how I grew up. different story altogether, but it was, extremely advantageous to me in going through all of this stuff because I mean, just even we're always concerned with how we're presenting, right? It's like a sign of the times because we're on social media. So we sort of all become to some extent aware of the use of language, the tool that it is, and how it where it's successful, where it helps us look the way we want to look, and where it helps us communicate what we want to communicate, but then where it fails, where it totally utterly fails. And that's where it's sort of a crapshoot talking about the phenomenal, because you're fighting an uphill battle in a sense, right? You're trying to use something that is unfortunately just too primitive and archaic to really grasp what it is that we're talking about. By merit of simply what language does, it sort of narrows the scope of things instead of broadening it. And so it's, as an intellectual, it is a very, very challenging topic to handle. So if you're prone to thinking deeply, you're prone to that in the first place. Then you have experiences. Wow, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of journals that have the beginnings ripped out of them because you never want people to read them, and all sorts of things as you try to come to terms with the fact that language is unfortunately inadequate here. It's what we definitely need to get somewhere, but it's never going to quite get across just how. I don't know how I want to put it. How fluid, how fast, right? Like the phenomenal has the ability to sort of just completely shake down the ego, the identity. Make us completely doubt what we were certain of just moments beforehand.
It jars you right out of your seat. It really does jar you right out of your seat. And I think, finally, just before I get to to asking questions, which for everyone listening, I will get there. This whole point you're making about losing positive or negative value judgments on the unfolding events is also something I really feel a kindredness with, because there's been times where I'm like, what the fucking shit happened here in Costa Rica with Julia and I really feels analogous to the type of uphill battle or pressured feeling with everything going wrong, right down to the issues with health. And I cannot determine if that is a byproduct of exposure, the frequency shift is enough that you're off kilter for a while thereafter, or if it's like something entirely different. Like in your case, I'll have questions that obviously I cannot relate to, but just to relate to this idea of like, it's not always a happy outcome to experience these things. And as these events escalate, especially within the context of a home or a relationship, it's hard. And we just recently had like a pretty amazing event here where a Turkish coffee cup setting slid across the table in front of both of us while we were sitting there. Her father had just passed away, and she had returned, Julia, my partner, had returned from Turkey and was preparing a Turkish coffee setting, which is like, a little copper pot, and they do it a certain way.
Yep. Yeah.
And then they give it to you in a small espresso style mug with a small saucer. And so she was preparing this cup of coffee, and in particular, she was talking about her father and how her father used to love Turkish coffee, and this is something she would do for him. And that at the end of Turkish coffee drinking, they make it in such a way that the grounds of the coffee are still in the cup, and they become quite cemented to the bottom of the cup. So you drink the beverage with the grounds stuck on the bottom of the cup. And then when you're done, you flip the cup over, and the pattern in which the grounds appears on the saucer is a fortune-telling device.
Oh, okay. Very
similar,
cool.
Similar to tea leaves, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's the context. She's telling me this, and she prepares the cup of coffee, and I was sitting at the center of a table at the not the head of the table, but the middle, and as you would sit opposing your partner who's sitting across the middle from you.
Yeah.
And she put the coffee to my left at the head of the table, approximately, 60 centimeters from my left hand, because she was just preparing it and she'd moved it off the counter onto that section of the table. She came around, she sat down, and we were talking about it more. And as we were talking about it, this cup of coffee spontaneously, of its own accord, with ultra smooth fluid motion, moved approximately 30 to 35 centimeters to the right, directly into a position right in between us. It was the most uncanny movement I've ever seen. And
Wow.
The liquid in the coffee cup wasn't even like shaking, it just super fluidly moved. And this is a marble table and a porcelain saucer with a porcelain cup on top. You couldn't hear a tink, a slide, a sound of porcelain on marble, nothing. It was just like, and I mean, when that happened, we both were stunned.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean, though. I mean, that is really like, because how do you deny that when something's literally moving in front of you?
And both of you see it identically, and it's a real object that you are aware of. This is a real object. This is not, I saw something out of the corner of my eye,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. When it's really in your face, undeniable, and you have somebody there with you, that right there, because it's sort of demonstrable of so many things all at once. You're like, okay, there's something I can't explain. There's that. And our mind again goes to what we're familiar with, the ideas of spirits. But then we sort of realize that doesn't neatly fill in all the blanks, and this hint that all of this stuff is now demonstrably connected. In other words, the stuff that we can't see, the stuff that we do see, how that's all moving, right? Like none of that you described could have happened without some incredible synchronization there of things happening at once. And it's that things, yeah, and that is, I feel like it's like a hint behind everything, that it's always demonstrable again of this fact that everything is really all connected, and it's gonna let us know. Sometimes that's favorable, sometimes it isn't. But I think that also then that kind of gets into, when you start talking about what's truly amazing about being a human, right? Like we do have this remarkable divine quality about us, which we talk about in this esoteric sense, but I think it could be sort of reduced in a very grounded way to simply the fact that we get to articulate meaning in our own lives. So even when these things might be seemingly inconsequential, just mind-boggling bizarre, or in the worst of cases, really bad and painful, negative in some sense, right? It's still up to us after the fact to decide what we do with that. What is bore from that? And I think that the fact that we can do that, the fact that we could articulate meaning in our own lives, is where we really get to flex as a human. And the creative potential that humans contain is enormous, but it's very rare that we actually recognize it. But if you say, hey, thinking back to this tea thing, and because of that, I had this conversation and this happened, and then you could start to see, wait a second, there really is a way where all of this stuff kind of fits together like a puzzle. But it's up to us what we want that picture to be at the end. If we put the picture together, it's still up to us what we want it to be. And it's I think that's a very developed way to kind of look at the phenomenal, and it really is, as you said, only bore from the experience of it, having to sit with that and kind of cope with the fact that there's no way you would ever be able to explain that. There's just no way.
Well, that's precisely where I feel kindredness with what you outlined, because it's not that Julia and I are fighting about what that event was, but from my more experienced perspective, I just look at that for exactly the black and white message that it is, which is it's her father saying, I'm okay. And the context there is that for week and a half after she'd been home, this is the first time she's lost a loved one, really. And she was asking a lot, in personal conversations with me, do you think my dad is okay? Like, where is he? What is it? Is he just in the ground? Is it, and my perspective is very much that probably deceased humans and fairies are just like partying hard right now with some of the best weed and music pumping, and we just can't see them.
Yeah, no, I get it, and it really does get at the heart of the matter, and that is that all of this goes back to the doorway we walk through inevitably, right? It all kind of in one facet, or I used to say all roads lead back to UFOs, and I no longer think that. I now believe all roads lead back to the doorway at the end of this walk we call life.
It's truly become apparent to me through, I guess, my own lived experience and then just my critical analysis of this whole conversation with people, that the main aspect of life is largely illusory. And as downright fucking impossibly physical as it is, and you just can't fucking escape it, it's a really clever illusion. Because the ability to modulate it, like you're talking about with double bottles of painkillers, is evidentiary and suggestive of a illusory system, one that is not as physical as, and so it's within that context, you might then be able to stretch your imagination a little further and to realize that like the soul is possibly eternal, and that this human run through, not that I'm saying human life is a simulation, but that the holodeck, for lack of a better word, in which this is all playing out is an extremely divinely constructed arena in which a human life can unfold for the sole purpose of growth and development of the soul. I also think that this is why time is linear in human life, because you need to experience a choice and a time before a choice.
Well, it has to be, right? For the school of hard knocks to work appropriately and incentivize appropriately, we need that linear time to organize things. And but I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's like, and that's why all roads do lead back to sort of recognizing the nature of living and dying to some extent, and I think that's kind of the beauty of what it does inform us of, because once you do realize that it is the holodeck, and you do realize the illusory nature of life, you could start to sort of chill out that fear of passing on, chill out that fear of dying, because and especially when you start to, if you really get into the meditative process and things of that nature, and you start having experiences that make you kind of experientially aware of the fact that you're more than your physical body, especially, right? Now we can start looking at what can we really do with this experience that we have here, because it really is fleeting, and special in this kind of this unique way. Like, we came here for a reason, and I think it's very hard to sort that out. And I mean, I like, right? Like, didn't the Greeks actually normalize rituals and things where they experienced some form of drug-induced death as a rite of passage, I believe, even moving on. And you see back like the Egyptians, how they celebrated passing on. All of these different cultures that seem to have, got a leg up on us, at least on these types of things. There's that congruent tone around dying, that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is necessary to understand this thing, to then be able to retroactively, while you're here, figure out what you're doing. And yeah, that's kind of like all, and again, all part of this oneness of how the phenomenal is constantly informing us of that. Take it seriously, but don't take it quite too seriously, right?
Okay, I'll finalize this portion of the episode and get to the questions I was dying to ask.
I keep you going. I'm bad with that.
Absolutely not. No, don't apologize whatsoever. I'm grateful for this part of the conversation.
Very organic conversation. Yeah.
No, this is extremely valuable stuff, if for nobody else, just for me, because boy, do I ever fucking agree with you on like 99% of everything you're saying here. Look, I think it kind of goes like this, and this is just, where I'll leave it. The life itself is your first gift, but like any real gift, a fairy gift, you got to untangle it. It's not going to be easy. When you finally start to get your head around life is when I think these alternate experiences start to happen, almost like levels of a game. You know what I mean?
That's very interesting perspective. I've thought about that myself. I have. I think that's actually a very deep and informed point you're making there about how all of these things are available, but is there some type of requisite for all of us and some type of individuated progress we need to make before we can get there? I feel that truly to be inherent as well. Yeah.
Yes, I think that short of saying there's a recipe, there is in fact a recipe. And I've touched on it multiple times on the show, but I'll say again, you got to have a good heart. Doesn't mean you have to be a good person or good all the time, but you have to have a center keel that always returns to like a good and true heart. And the Fae know that.
Yeah.
And the Fae could be all encompassing. It could be any unseen force. I think they all have the innate capability of knowing you deeply, whether that's a demon, a fairy, God itself. I think any unseen force, and this I would even go so far as to extend to deceased loved ones, because like I said a moment ago, souls are eternal, and when they transition form, they're still, aware of innate goodness or not. I do think that like you're going to get those initial interactions like you're describing with the bottle of painkillers, with the beer, with the Lysol bottle. This is, I think, where it starts is a reaction to having a good heart, exercising some form of creativity with your given talents. Doesn't matter what, but just doing something that is evocative of creation.
100%. I agree with that. 100%. Yeah.
That could take many forms. You could be caring for animals, and that is in itself a form of creation. But you have to be like applying yourself to something that inspires on some level. And if you can muddle your way through the shit of life and still come out the other side creating and with a good heart, you will start to then potentially be shown more of this subject matter that Clyde and I are talking about today. That's my true perspective.
Oh, totally. That's like music to my ears. I have to stop myself or we won't get to the questions, because I could go, that actually rings so true to my philosophy on life, why I've become a career artist. And wow. Yeah, I could go into that quite deep. I mean, the good heart, right? Because it's like, we all start off all over the board, every which way. We all have all of our different backgrounds and shit to cope with. But the thing about it is, if having quote unquote a good heart boils down to figuring out just enough that you could start doing the right things for the right reasons, right? Then there is sort of like certain moral and ethical foundational things that we could sort of all agree upon, like not lying, not exploiting somebody, not interfering with somebody else's free will. Like there's these certain fundamental things, and when you figure those out, they are of course these real hallmarks of a certain type of character, but they're invisible. And I think all of that invisible stuff, all of the things about us that are intangible, are tangible to quote unquote the other side, however you want to look at that. But so I agree with you. I think that we're known immediately, intimately, because all of that invisible stuff is visible. And they can tell if you're doing the right things for the right reasons, or if there's a different type of incentive or hierarchy of motivation behind a person. Totally. Wow. That was very insightful, man.
Well, to make this one a Christmas episode, so be good for goodness sake.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Let's go back in time to this situation with the bottle of painkillers. Okay. Now I am riveted by the duplication of objects. You are the first person I've spoken to for an episode who has told me this story. However, this season 2, I've become low-key obsessed with tracking down people that have had objects, apport, move, appear, reappear, disappear for prolonged periods of time.
Yeah.
Return to secure locations. You've touched on a lot of these things happening: the money, the beer, the candies, the
Oh, it was undeniable, and I was kind of again trying to bullet point hit but there was so much of it. There was so much of it, and things moving around. Oh boy, yeah. There was again. It was almost like it was getting stuck in our face at points. Like if you're gonna really try to just turn a blind eye to this, well, here now try to turn a blind eye to this or this, and it would just. There was actually one I shouldn't have left this out as I was going through the chronology, but it seemed simple even though it wasn't. Where a shoe from our second story, we were arguing. Actually, this is during the onset of the bickering, and we had kind of developed after the ibuprofen and the bottle doubling, where we weren't going to talk about it inside the house. And as we were bickering, something came back around to the subject matter, and I could see that she was like, "No, we don't talk about that here." And right as we were getting into that, this shoe. I mean, there was such force that this shoe flew down the steps with that we have a curtain at the bottom of the steps, and it actually knocked down the whole curtain. I mean, the shoe flew like it got shot out of a cannon. I never saw anything thrown like that with that kind of velocity. And it was like, again, it was like, if you're really not gonna look at this, well, maybe you'll pay attention now. And yeah, it was, but it was so common that there's no way I could even remember them all. There'd be no way. It was happening all the time.
You know, you're not the first person to outline multiple instances of object manipulation, as for lack of a better word. There's this like one book, it's called like the disappearing object phenomenon, is what they term the one where objects disappear and then return, which is a pretty good name for it actually. But
yeah.
You know, because it's just so straightforward. But okay, let me just get into some of the questions that I have about these bottles. So I want to make sure that I've got your story correct before I go ahead and ask, because
Yep.
You had told me 45 minutes ago, so I just want to make sure I've got it. You had purchased a bottle previously in anticipation of her time of the month, and you had put it in a high, hard to reach place.
Yep.
You're being a good boyfriend, basically. You're being a good dude, and anticipating your woman's needs, which I applaud you for. Good job. And so she, called you expressing a need for ibuprofen, and you said, "Okay, I'm going to come home and get it for you, and give it to you," as I recall.
Yep.
And then you did come home, but you briefly dropped some stuff off and then went downstairs to go get additional supplies from a store downstairs. At which point, something in the house gave her the bottle of ibuprofen.
Yes. And she believed that was me. So I can make this, I'll elaborate a little more just to make it as clear as possible. But basically I'd went to the store and had picked up the stuff when she had called me. And again, I could even detail why the significance of the cabinet being like high like it was. She was very, very petite. I knew it was a pain for her to climb up there without a chair, which is why I was telling her I would grab it as soon as I got back. But our downstairs was where I dropped off all those groceries. Upstairs is where she was, and the cabinet was in the same room with her. So I had exchanged pleasantries with her after I came in first, and she had expressed that she had wanted a drink that she knew I had bought her. So that was why I came back downstairs to grab her that bottle. And just in the time that I went down that flight of steps, remembered that I had to get her the ibuprofen, turned back around with the drink, came upstairs and handed it to her. It was in that time frame that she had believed that I had come back in the room, and she was very certain it was me, even though she said she didn't look up from her phone, but in her peripheral vision, she had seen me, and I handed her the ibuprofen.
The details here are so utterly fascinating. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Originally, I'm not sure why, I had understood you had gone down to like a store. I was imagining you living in like a kind of residence above a commercial building below you.
Oh, my bad. That was probably the order I said it in the first place. But no, our 2-story home, 3-story home, actually, 1 subterranean floor. And there's a plaza like about 1/8 of a mile down the road. So it's real quick, 10-minute trip.
Understood. You know what? It's a valuable lesson in the art of constructive listening. So that's why I wanted to get a little brief on it before I started to ask questions. So, okay, still, I mean, utterly fascinating either way. It doesn't require a store downstairs whatsoever. So it's interesting on the one hand that, first of all, there's a physical object. Second of all, that it's being handed to her.
Yes. Interacting with something. Yes. Yes. She did not move from the bed she was in at all, which was part of what made that very alarming to me. Yeah.
Do you recall what she was doing when was she looking at her device or something and she just sort of casually?
Yes. She was laying down in the same spot she was when I left, when I got back, still on her phone. She had her phone and her laptop by her plugged in all the time where she slept. And she had not moved from that spot. She was laying there. TV was on, but she wasn't paying attention to that because she was doing whatever she was doing on her phone.
So I can totally see this moment unfolding from her perspective, which is that you've just come back with the bottle, which is natural for her to assume. And so
Yeah, it
she's
made
not,
total sense to her.
yeah. And so she's just sort of just casually like receiving this drop off of the bottle. Now you come back upstairs with the drink. And you say to her, I'm going to go get you that bottle of ibuprofen. And that's when she looks at you initially.
That was the deer in headlights. Color just drained from her face as soon as I said, I'm going to grab that bottle of ibuprofen for you.
Wow.
Yep.
I can, initially and here again, you really are effectively taking myself and the audience into this moment. I really appreciate this a lot. Your storytelling is immaculate because I can really feel the confusion that she must have been feeling, and I can totally understand what kind of look she therefore had on her face, and I can imagine the corresponding panic that would have come over you watching her adopt the face of something is fucking wrong here.
Yeah. Well, it was like as it played out, we could see, I could see her questioning herself and her sanity, then mine, then, and as this is going and we're realizing like there really isn't an explanation for this. And it became very apparent when we actually compared the bottles. That was what made it even weird because the bottles were identical.
Okay, let me get there in a second because I have another person I'm really encouraging to come on the show who won't because they feel that they are insane, but who has a double phone charger situation going on, which I'll get to in a second. But so I just want to make sure. So you're in the same room as the location of the ibuprofen initially and in the same room. So so you say to her, no, I didn't do that. And then you go to open the area where this is, and there's a second bottle in there. When that occurred, when did you both immediately make eyes on this second bottle? And what was the feeling like when you saw that second bottle? That's my main question.
Man. So there was this brief hope, right? Like, because when she said to me, no, you gave it to me, and she, is clearly adamant and is holding it, I'm saying there is no way that I handed you that bottle because the bottle I am going to hand you is right up in this cabinet. Like we had addressed the weirdness of this prior to my turning around because it was only about 3-4 steps behind me that I was then facing that cabinet. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to open this up and it's not going to be there. It's just not going to be there. And I'm going to have to face the fact that I just had some kind of hiccup in my brain or something. But when I opened it, and I mean, it's right there and I grab it and take it over to her, that was, I think, when the panic really set in, when it was like there was even a brief instance where we had to be like, is there somebody in the house? Like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here? Because there was like no explanation for it. And since nothing had been going on so extraordinary up until that point, right? It was like every logical thing we could think of had to run through our minds first, which didn't take very long before, again, we were then flipping the light on, looking, and they were both from CVS. They both had the same lot numbers on the box, same expiration dates. And I mean, I think the pictures should be on Reddit somewhere on Glitch in the Matrix. I know that was where he told the story and they told us to take pictures. So I believe I would have posted them in the same thread.
And both bottles contained pills and were otherwise normal.
Unopened, yes, which was like, and again, so weird. Why would we have two unopened bottles from the same lot number? It was CVS brand, which wasn't even a store I went to that day. So there was that as well.
And I mean, because there's never a gotcha moment on Fascinating Fae, but just I ask this because the critical advocates will want me to ask it. You didn't originally buy 2 bottles. You bought just one originally, which makes sense. Why would you buy 2? But
it was, again, way ahead of time. I found this bottle in the house. The first bottle that I knew of, I had found in the house cleaning days prior, knowing that she was going to have her time of the month. And that's why I placed it up there. So that first bottle I could have bought months before then. We hadn't gone to CVS too much. We didn't get our prescriptions filled there. So it wasn't often we had anything that was CVS branded. So that had to be, again, pretty, it was just lying around somewhere. And as soon as I saw it and I knew how she went through them like Pez, I said, okay, I'm going to throw that up there. But the fact that the second, again, both of them being CVS brand, same lot, same expiration date, it at least means that they would have had to have been picked up at the same time, I would presume. But again, it's even if I don't know. I never actually went and looked if you could just go and if you take bottles off the shelf, if they all match like that or what have you. But these two definitely were identical, unopened, same, again, lot number, everything on them. Every identifiable mark thing on the box was the same.
yeah, there's one thing which is like, okay, I'm Jem from the UK. My husband lost his wedding ring, and 3 years later, after I realize that fairies are real and I start to talk to them in my head, they give me the wedding ring back at the front door of my patio. That's one thing, because you're like, okay, there's a wedding ring and maybe a little tiny guy that we can't see moving super, super fast took it. And then later, that same tiny guy that we can't see moving super, super fast brought it back. But it's still the same wedding ring, right? Like, that's all somehow understandable. It's when you get into this duplication of objects.
Exactly. When they're like, how did it even do, if it's a double of a wedding ring? And some of these cases do. One of her relatives died. She'd moved a bunch of times and thought she'd lost this particular flower that was in this glass dome. And as it turns out, and she's unpacking her stuff and looking around doing whatever, she comes across 2 of them. And like you said, it's like, again, duplication, especially when it's something like that, like it's so specific, so exactly the same, or the item in and of itself is of a rarity like that. It leaves you no choice. You have to, again, it's, if you try not to look at it, it says, well, maybe you'll look at this, and sometimes, boy, it's weird.
Interestingly, the audio briefly switched from the traditional input to a different one, and I might have lost 4 to 5 minutes of us speaking there, your side of it. Earlier, my audio did a similar thing. Again, I can't determine if that's the Fae themselves doing like an acknowledgement flex, or if it's like, I'm just going to go way out there because I think it's fun to sometimes just, let your mind go way out there. But like, is there like an agency of anti-Fae knowledge and they are aware of the real-time production of this conversation and are trying to interfere with its release? Sometimes I can't decide what it feels like when these things happen. Does it feel like a tricky little Fae, or does it feel like
yeah, right? Like, what's the mood behind it? Is it just playing around, letting you know that they're there, don't forget about us, or is it a knock it off, right? Is it
yeah, have you gotten too close to a touch point that is true and therefore interference is required as a matter of...
Yeah, don't be spoiling our secrets. Don't pull back the curtain for anybody just yet.
Okay, here's my little addition to help you with, reconciling this moment. And again, I don't know what is going on with the Fae. I don't know what they are or what it's about, but I do know it's real. That much at least I'm confident in. So this guy, he has like an off-market charger for his car. The kind that slips into your cigarette lighter. It's round. It's USB style with a couple of ports. But it was like specific because he had picked it up when he was in Japan. And it was like, just like an off-market Japanese charger, really sleek looking. This is a kind of a guy who likes to like a modified Honda kind of car.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Yep.
So this is this guy's style. And one day he's going over to his friend's place, and he's like, I've got to bring my cable portion of my charger. So he gets the cable portion of his charger out from the docket in the car. He drives over there. His phone is charging. He gets out and he takes the cable portion up to his friend's house. And he does this thing and he gets back into the car. And he still has the cable portion with him when he gets back in the car. And he charges his phone and he goes home. And the next day he's detailing his car, because this is the kind of guy he is, details his car a lot. And he does what he does all the time, which is he takes the cylindrical portion of the charger, the one that fits into your cigarette lighter, out.
Yeah.
And he takes that out and he takes the cable portion that's with it, also out, and puts it on top of the car. And he's vacuuming and cleaning the car completely. And he goes back to the roof and he can't find the charger or the cable.
Oh boy, yep, one of those.
So he's looking for it. He's looking for it. He can't find it, and he's starting to get pissed off. Right as this is like zenithing, like where he's like, "Where the f is this? Did a crow land on the roof when I wasn't looking and take it?" Like he's beside himself.
Oh, that's seriously where it'll take you, though, because it really, it's boggling, and it'll be things just like that.
So he gets a message from his friend on his phone right then. And his friend said, "Yo, bro, I just got back from work and I noticed you left your charger here." So he's like confused, right? Because he knows he only brought the cable portion to his friend's house last night. That's it. He didn't take the cylindrical portion up to his friend's house. Why would he? There's no cigarette lighter USB.
Yeah.
In his friend's wall, right? That's only inside a car. And his friend is saying, "I've got your cable and cylindrical charger here with me. You must have left it here when you were here last night." And he's like,
wow.
No. I just had it on the roof of my car. And so he goes over to his friend's house. He goes up, goes to his friend's. It's sure enough, it's his charger and everything. And he's like, really confused. He's swearing to his friend, "I was vacuuming. I physically removed it. I put it on the roof of the car along with the other stuff, and then I was going to put it all back when I was done vacuuming. And why is it at your house?" And they're both so confused, especially the fact that the cylindrical part is there. Because why, right? Why did he leave that at his friend's house?
That's so classic. Because everything's connected. It's all those variables. It's like I feel like they just put them all on a table and mix them all up however they want.
They really are trying to make a point. And so
Yep.
What happens next is the kicker. And I know you know maybe what's coming next here.
Oh, I know where this is going.
So he leaves his friend's house and he goes to get in his car. And when he gets in his car, what do you think is plugged in?
Of course.
Charger and cable is there in the car already plugged in. And in his hand is the charger and cable. And I've seen the photos. I mean, either he's an extremely good storyteller or you and him have experienced the same phenomena. One of the two is true.
And I have to believe it. That's the thing. There was definitely a time 10, 15 years ago. Boy, I'd have raised an eyebrow and had various explanations, but no longer, because I've seen just like that. There was actually one time, because I did feel as though the bickering that was going on and it would always start off with small things. And there was a point when she had just thought that I was losing my mind, because it seemed like I was losing things all the time. And I was telling her, like, I've never lost things. Like, things are disappearing now. It's not me. I don't know what to tell you. And it just felt like we were constantly looking for things, just enough to really stress us out. And it was the one night, it was just a pack of cigarettes. And I mean, we were looking for these cigarettes, and this was at a point when she was very resolved to, if we just get along with them, they'll return our stuff. And I'm still kind of like, oh, I don't know about all of this. And she got me to just do the thing with her, held her hand. She started saying, some things and apologizing and asking, please return our stuff. We got to get to sleep. We stopped this little pseudo, whatever you want to call it, a prayer moment where we were just kind of focused on this together. Let go of her hands. Right behind me, the pack of cigarettes is literally right behind me. As soon as we do this and I turn around, the pack of cigarettes is right there. And it was just stuff like that, like and again, it wouldn't, if this happened to me all the time, if it was more, but it never did. None of that ever happened before the period of time that we're discussing, and since she was gone, no more disappearing things. So it's very, very interesting.
Holding some space to learn how to cry, release and renew with each tear from my eye, healing the wounds, this ancestral pain, the agreements are due. It's just why we came, to wake from the dream and rise to the times. Give thanks every day for the gift of our lives. These friends that are here, intentions aligned. This earth that is home of divine design. Be it May, yeah, the old world's burning. It's going up in flames. So we look up to the standing people, and they teach us to be brave. Eyes open wide, we're holding our grounded presence. In the yin and in the yang, roll with the tides, sing a new sound, your spirit. It's the reason that we came. In this world so fractured and torn, we'll create something new for the kids to be born. Pray that we learn from the darkness and fear, but focus on truth and the abundance that's here, and open up wide when the medicine calls. We're sharing our gifts for the service of all. We'll honor this earth and unite the tribes, healing the souls of all humankind. Be it May, yeah, the old world's burning. It's going up in flames. So we look up to the standing people, and they teach us to be brave. Eyes open wide, we're holding our grounded presence. In the yin and in the yang, roll with the tides, sing a new sound, your spirit. It's the reason that we came. Be it May, yeah, the old world's burning. It's going up in flames. So we look up to the standing people, and they teach us to be brave. Eyes open wide, we're holding our grounded presence. In the yin and in the yang, roll with the tides, sing a new sound, your spirit. It's the reason that we came.